So, battling for your first competitions, you started it with Manchester Eats, didn't you, I think, at first?
Yeah. I sort of always had it in my head that I'd wait a certain amount of years before doing the battling, but I always kind of knew that I'd do it at some point because obviously, you sort of, you're looking at DMC, you're studying DMC videos to try and learn the techniques and everything, and just saw it as a sort of a rite of passage really within the hip hop culture, you know, because that's, really where I was coming from. So I'd not planned on it being, it was 1999. I'd not necessarily planned on starting battling at that point, but by that point I'd gone to college, started doing bits of things. I did like sort of pretty early dexterity in Burnley.
I remember seeing you at them, and word got around like there's this lad playing down there, and he's superb. And,
well, pretty soon after it was pretty much it was just before I got my dex actually. I didn't, after everybody kind of got more into rave and sort of hip hop sort of died a bit of a death with a lot of people, sort of late 80s, about 88, just kind of as the rave sort of scene was sort of coming up. A lot of the old original hip hop heads seemed to gravitate towards that. But I think because I was young, I was too young to go out raving, and I was still very much blinkered and kind of, I wasn't interested in going out raving, like chasing girls or whatever. I was just into this thing, and nobody was stopping me, So for a few years, after the people who I'd kind of got into hip hop with were less interested in it than I was. My brother went to Burnley College, came back first day, and he's like, yeah, there's a lad in my class exactly the same as you. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, he's into hip hop, and you'll never guess what, but he's a DJ. And I'm like, what? I'm like, right, I need to meet him. And he lived over in Barnoldswick. And so anyway, went over on the bus to Barnoldswick, and it was like an epiphany. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it was like, went to Chris's room, Chris Hargreaves, went under the name of Mr. Tickle. And it was like in Barnoldswick, rave hadn't happened. Do you know what I mean? Everybody was just still into hip hop. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, and his attic where he sort of resided in his mum and dad's house was like sort of Barnoldswick community centre, really. Like everybody sort of just went round there to chill or whatever, and we just scratched like lunatics basically, like while everybody came round and chilled. So that was our little thing. So it was like I had an instant DJ crew just about the time I was getting my decks. So it was amazing. So I forgot where we were going with this, the battling thing. So
Manchester, your first competitions.
Yeah, so I'd come up with Chris and Rick Alton, Filthy Rich, and we were doing like a sort of weird Burnley Barnoldswick sort of scratch pickle scenario where we'd set all the decks up and go nuts for years. But also I was interested in sort of mixing records together, so I started getting the odd bits of gigs. Went to Blackburn College, 93 to 95. Then went to uni and started getting bits of gigs in Manchester. And at the time, like Grand Central and Fat City were massive.
Yeah.
That whole sort of Mo Wax, Ninja Tune scene, trip hop and all that.
Quite a unique time, weren't it? Really, back then. It was. Yeah, I mean, I weren't really in that scene, but I were aware of it. Looking back as well, it were quite some fairly unique music coming out of Manchester, especially from those record shops.
Yeah, it was. Like, I mean, like all the first proper hip hop nights that I went to were in Manchester. Thankfully, my brother went to uni in Manchester, so I had a free bed to sleep at. So me and my mate David Trevelyan, who was my mate from Blackburn College, who happened to be a rapper, so I was in a rapper DJ situation with him at Blackburn College. We just used to bomb over to all these hip hop nights, sort of like from 93 onwards, and they were pretty thin on the ground. Everybody talks about golden era hip hop and all that lot. In the UK, certainly in the Northwest in Manchester, it was a very niche thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody talks about the 93, 94 as being the heyday. People might have been watching Yo MTV Raps, but I'll tell you what, people weren't going to hip hop clubs. Do you know what I mean? There might have been like 1 or 2 decent hip hop nights in Manchester about that time.
Right.
So the Grand Central thing came along, and all the sort of trip hop and the more sort of eclectic kind of nights came along, and it was a real sort of renaissance where you would hear good hip hop, but it'd be mixed in with funk and original breaks and, you know, sort of soul and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, that scene was prevalent sort of mid-late 90s. And so one of the big DJs on that scene was Peter Parker, because he was...
a finger thing, weren't it?
Yeah, finger thing. But prior to that, we had a night going on in Night and Day in Manchester called Pork Scratching. And that was like a free-form sort of turntablist live band night. So we had a bass player, we had a drummer, we had my mate Gareth Mallington, Sir Conical, on the keys, dropping weird samples, and we'd really sort of take the turntable as a musical instrument within that context and really jam with the bands. So so we were getting a bit of a name doing that, and that's kind of how I sort of probably made a bit of my name in Manchester as a scratch DJ. But at the same time, this Fat City thing was happening, and then Peter Parker was doing the battles, and he seemed to be getting all the props from like the wider sort of scene. So just sort of ego got a hold, basically. I got to the point where I was getting to a point where I was getting a bit more confident with the skills, and but this other guy was getting all the props because he was doing the competition. So I was like, you know what, I reckon I could take him and all that.
Nothing like a bit of rivalry for motivation.
Yeah, it was just that old. It was just that sort of hip-hop thing. You know what I mean? I was sort of very early 20s, and you know, it's a good competitive sort of spirit, really. You know, there was no real animosity in it, but I was a DJ trying to make my name, so I had that hunger. Do you know what I mean? To make a name. So yeah, 99 DMC comes around, and my main mission was to beat Peter Parker, really. And it wasn't about getting to the UK finals. It was about beating Peter Parker in Manchester. So that's how I ended up battling, basically. And then I think I found out a couple of weeks before the heat that he wasn't actually doing the heat.
Right.
So I had to change my set around. I had about 2 minutes dedicated to dissing Peter Parker. I mean, it's funny now because me and him are really good mates and stuff. Yeah. But and like I say, it wasn't a personal thing; it was just a hip hop thing.
That's what battling's about. You watch old craze videos, and they throwing digs in. You know, they found record with insults on and stuff. You know, well, it's just tongue in cheek, innit? A lot of it. Yeah.
Well, it's an acknowledgement that he's the man. You know what I mean? I'm going to take him out. You know, that's the thing. So anyway, so I did the heat, took all the Peter Parker stuff out, and I didn't actually win that heat, even though it went amazing and it got a good response and stuff. But Uppercut from York played a blinder by doing the Emperor's March from Star Wars, and it was the week that the new Star Wars was coming out, so everybody went absolutely flipping nuts. So he got first place, I got second, but what it meant was I got to the UK final. So that ended up sort of causing a whole kind of snowball effect where it was like, right, I'm in the UK final, I've got to try and be as good as, you know, the guys in the UK final, and, you know, one thing led to another after that.
So yeah, that'll be like the scratched perverts era, won't it? About 99, I'm guessing.
Yeah, 99, yeah. So, they started really dominating maybe in 98, the year before they started dominating, I guess, the UK scene. So yeah, on any given year during that period, you'd have, you know, you might have 4 scratch perverts in the battle and 3 sat on the judging bench. So it was kind of wasn't the easiest judging panel to win over, but the great thing about coming from somewhere like Burnley or whatever is, like, it's almost a good feeling to be an underdog. It makes you work harder, and you just like, you go into London and you're sort of invading their territory, and you're just like,
who's this?
Well, it just makes you work harder. I think you know what I mean. Like I was like, in order to perk their ears up, I'm really gonna have to show them something here. So it made me work my arse off really, and got there eventually. But it was a cool period. It's sort of nothing like. I was just going to say, it's like the thing about DJ battling is you're sort of concentrating all your efforts and all your creativity and your sort of practice into like into one performance or depending on how many battles you're doing. It's a very sort of, it's a great way to concentrate your efforts. And there's nothing like putting your neck on the line, in a sort of in a public scenario to really sort of motivate you to kind of work harder and push yourself really. So it was a good time.
Yeah, I think at about that time, I'm pre-2000 or just after. I think I might have met you. You and Bordy were doing a outreach at a youth club. I think you were down at Bruncher, weren't it? Oh.
Right, yeah. I remember now, yeah.
I had a lot of mates who were playing Scouse House, and they kept saying, "Oh, Woody's down there. Come and meet him. You're into scratching." It was just when I started to get into it, and I think it might have been about that time, because I think I can remember you telling me what it was like going down to do DMCs. Oh.
Yeah. I'd have been in the thick of it really, and but yeah, I remember that meeting actually, because usually I'd do bits of that stuff here and there, and people generally weren't, like you say, they were coming, they were, sort of more after a bit of donk really than than scratching and stuff. And but I remember you being super enthusiastic about it all. And
oh God, I was like scribbling stuff down, going home and like, how did he do this? And
but it was cool. It was a nice, it was a good. I remember that. It was good.
Yeah, because I got into scratching a lot later than, because like I say, I did 840, but I was same old following come from a rave background, and I didn't scratch for a good few years, and I got bored of beat matching. Thought I fancy scratching. I also, like, my musical taste had grown a bit, I wanted to start mixing hip hop, and I thought, you need to scratch if you're going to mix hip hop properly. So that's what got me into it, and then it just so happened you were doing this outreach thing down there. And my mates had been badgering me for a bit, and I didn't know much about you then. I just heard rumours because there's this guy down there and he's really good, because I weren't picking up DMC videos or anything then, and then I went down and it like, oh, Jesus Christ, what's this guy doing? how do you do things so fast? It's like, oh, God.
Well, it's always great, like first time you see stuff in person as well.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously sort of pre-internet. I mean, the internet was probably about by then, but like the whole time we were probably learning, there wasn't, all these sort of, YouTube lessons and all that lot. It was more sort of a kind of a secret art that you had to kind of...
you might catch something on MTV, like an half an hour programme or something, and it'd be like, Jazzy Jeff or something like that, and even then it'd be cut edited. It wouldn't be going into depth of what he was doing, what he was using,
But I think that, I mean, even though I think people learn a lot quicker these days because of the tuition and stuff available, which is great, but that, like, for example, these techniques that I could show somebody in a workshop scenario where I could probably teach somebody, for example, a chirp scratch within 5 minutes, and they'd have the fundamentals of it, and they'd be able to put their hands straight on the decks and do it because I'm showing them a certain way. But like when you're sort of learning it from either listening to records or second guessing some dodgy footage that you've seen, it's a much longer process. Some of those scratches might have took us a year of guessing to figure out, and even then we might have been guessing in the wrong way and across a different technique along the way. In a way, it's sort of cool because it gives you like a little personal slant on it, or a bit more of an individual sort of execution of a certain scratch. But yeah, it's a very laborious way of working. But I think it becomes less. What's the word? it's less of a duplication, really. You know, or you can sort of. I think that's when there's a natural difference of style comes out naturally through that learning process, as opposed to the sort of like, you know, very methodical kind of tutorial type of
I've got a good example
that we have now
with that, because I saw you do the woodpecker scratch, and then I went home and I didn't see you for ages, I think, and then I was trying to do it and I got it wrong, and I've got one like where I put my thumb and I just whacked my fingers against it. So it's like you said, I'd seen you do it once, and then went off and did my own thing, thought I got it, and it was completely wrong, but it's still a useful thing. It was like, you know, you know, and like you say, you've done your own thing. Whereas if it had been on a video in high fidelity and you could really drill down, slow it down, it'd just be a carbon copy, wouldn't you? It allows like greater freedom of innovation, because you can't look at these things as accurate as you can do now, don't you? Like you say, I understand.
And in a way, in that sense, you're sort of getting to a result through your ears, you know. Like, So you're figuring out, does that sound right? And like I say, the technique might be slightly different, but you're aiming for the sound, aren't you? Which I think should always be, you know, priority, really. You know, how it sounds, and you know. But anyway, yes.
Yeah, so then with the ITF, you won. You were the first European to do it. I remember the Vestax World Champion, as you say, with the one with the 2 tone arms. So go on, tell us about them. Now, what was winning them like? Where did you win them as well?
Yeah, mental. So first battle was 1999. Just went to the UK final for that. I believe I came 4th in the UK final, but it was good experience and sort of got me sort of a bit more used to them kind of crowds and just getting that experience, really. 2000, again, I did the same battles. I think I did ITF, actually. I was in the UK ITF final, and the ITF, the main part of the ITF, because within that, it's like boxing. You've got different belts. So DMC is the old school one that everybody knows. There's always been sort of a counter movement within the scene, because DMC was seen as establishment a little bit. ITF was created by turntablists for turntablists. So it was like more from within the scene out. So ITF had a lot of respect within the scene, because it was supposed to encompass the values of hip hop and creativity and this, that, and the other. And they had a very strict, well, not strict, but they had a categorized methodology.
Mythology.
Anyway, they had a methodology to the judging criteria, whereas DMC, you could pick whoever you thought you liked the best. Whereas ITF, they wanted accountability to the judges, so they set out certain rules for the judging. Anyway, that said, within that competition, you've got a specific scratching category, you've got a specific beat juggling category, and they've got a category that they call the advancement, and that's where you're supposed to demonstrate everything together. And the format of that is very much like, it's a one-on-one situation. It's a knockout competition. So you'd like be in one round against one other DJ, and you'd have to do a set, like a 90-second set, and then they'd have to do one back at you, and then basically you had 2 sets against each other. And then the judges, following that criteria, like how good was his scratching, how creative was it, how good was his beat juggling, how creative was it, blah, blah, blah. They judge a winner. If you won, you got through to the next final, the next thing. So they'd have, you know, quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals, and all that. So 2000, I got to the final of that versus +1 from the Scratch Perverts, and he took that battle, which was cool. 2001 was really where I'd sort of I was getting more confident with it, built the skills up, blah, blah, blah. I came 2nd in the UK DMC that year, but that year I'd won the UK final for the ITF, and I'd won the UK final for the Vestax. So for both of them, I got sent to America to do the World Finals. So the World Finals for the 2001 Vestax was in LA, and that was one weekend. And as chance would have it, the following weekend was the World Finals for the ITF in San Francisco. So I could sort of kill two birds with one stone, if you will. So it was like one trip to America to rep the UK for both these World Finals. So it was wicked. So yeah, did the one in LA for the World Vestax. Now that year I didn't win it. It was Boogie Blind, who is the DJ for like Pharaoh Monch and loads of dead cool US rappers. I think he's sort of like X-Men sort of extended family, really. Really cool guy, really cool DJ. So from that experience, it all went great. I did the set like as I'd wanted it, and crowd reaction was all cool, but I just, didn't go the judges' way. But in a way that made me relax, and I sort of I was putting less weight on the ITF the following week. So I went to ITF in San Francisco, and sort of working my way through round for round. And then before I know it, I'm in a boxing ring faced with the French champion, and it's me versus him. And it's like one guy left, to beat for a world title. So yeah, ended up. It actually went tiebreak. I think we sort of went both of our rounds, and the judges were like, "Give us another round." And I don't think I really had any sets left by that point, because you've got to do it. You've got to do it strategically. Do you know what I mean? So you might be up against somebody really strong in an early round. You might be up against the guy who you think's the best, but you go up against him in the quarterfinal. So you're thinking like, well, he's like one of the best guys in the comp, so I'm going to have to use some really strong material to get to the next guy.
Yeah.
So you're sort of strategizing. So I think I've done a bit of that, like use some of my stronger stuff against some of the earlier guys, and like I say, so I think I competed in the final with two of my routines that I didn't think were my best ones. Anyway, they called it evens on that, so they're like, right, what else have you got? Pull out something else. And I can't remember, but it was a pretty freestyle routine that I had to pull out, to be fair, because I'd already done about 8 different routines on the night, and you can't repeat anything. You know what I mean? It's got to be fresh stuff. So whatever it was, I did. He may have been in the same position. He may have been on a freestyle set as well. But either way, we both had to pull an extra one out. And anyway, they called it sort of world title. So it was just completely surreal by that point. I was just like,
pinch me,
flipping it. Yeah, Burnley to San Francisco. Like got this big. I was going to say it's up there, but I think it's somewhere else. I've got a big like wrestler's belt with like So so that was bonkers. But you sort of put yourself in these situations. But and then the following year, I didn't go for the ITF again because I thought, well, I've won it now.
Yeah.
Do that.
Retire unbeaten.
Well, I just didn't go for that because it's a lot of work getting all them separate routines out.
I
still had a bee in my bonnet for DMC because all the time I was winning these UK finals and like I won this world title, I was still coming second in DMC, and it was so annoying because I was beating all the same people in the other competitions. So I was just like, so I went for DMC again, 2002, came second again, controversially for some people. But
I can remember one of those routines, and who was the presenter? Tony Summit, weren't he? And I think he turned around to you and he said to you, how many records did you put on then? It were one. I don't know if it was that year. It were 1 year. You can tell you'd really were trying to pull something out your sleeve. Gone for it. Doing like twice as many records as it. I think maybe a lot more than any other competitors. And even he said, how many did you pull out? you know, and you still didn't win it.
Yeah, the thing is, it's so subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, like some people, you know, I had quite an aggressive technical style. Do you know what I mean? So it depends on who you've got on the judging panel, and
yeah.
And so sometimes it depends on what mates you've got on the judging panel. Do you know what I mean?
I got told, I don't know if it's a rumour, but like they said, you know, it's primarily a London crowd there, so they cheer the loudest for the people from London, and that has a bit of effect a little bit.
It can work that way, and it can work that it is always in London. So usually, you know, sort of out of 10 judges on that panel, you know, 8 or 9 of them will probably be based in London, because they're asking people to judge, and you know they're usually not paying judges, you know.
Yeah.
So as it works out, you know, I think familiarity can play a sort of a subconscious bias, you know, like if they're seeing people they're seeing in and out of the clubs they're playing week in, week out. But that's not to say that, you know, like I'm constantly on those panels as well, and I really try and not bring that into the mix. So you can only second guess. At the end of the day, it's not always going to go your way.
No.
And people are allowed to like what they're allowed to like. So it is what it is. But yeah, from that point, I sort of I think I came second 3 times in the DMC. So from that point, I was just like, I just gave it up at that point. But I did win the UK Vestax again, so I went out for the finals of that, and that was the year I did all the 2 needles on 1 record thing and all the sort of left field stuff. But to be honest with you, by 2002, I think I got Vestax turntables in 2001, and that's when my sort of attention really turned towards those turntables so far as my creative endeavors, because you could do so much more with them, pitch wise and musicality wise. So a lot of my better ideas were probably on the Vestax turntables by that point. So so that's when I got the Vestax title, and that was my last year doing battles, I think.